just a little background. The city, like many other cities, has a charter which regulates how we operate. And our charter requires that every 10 years we look at we have a committee that's appointed, and we do an overview of the entire charter, see if there's any changes needed. This year was the year that we had that requirement, and I had about 15 residents from Rittman volunteer. We went over every issue in the charter section, and they came up with 8 issues that they thought they would recommend to the voters to change. Now, all the issues have to be approved by the voters, so it's just a confirmation of that committee. And issue 1 was the Recreation and Parks Advisory Commission. This commission hasn't met for quite some time. I've been in this office for almost 10 years, and it hasn't met since I've been in there. Since the Rittman Recreation Center was built, we have a board that meets monthly, so they basically have assumed the duties. So it's just to clean up the charter, we recommended that commission be abolished. The second issue is council members and how they're appointed to fill vacancies. If somebody passes away, moves out of town, that type of thing. I'll give you a good example. Recently we had one councilman just elected, and then right after he was elected, he resigned. Well, council has to appoint the person that fills that term, and that could be 3 years. So this section, this change would make nobody could serve more than 180 days without running for an election. Issue 3, this is probably the most important to us because it helps us out in the meetings. Every meeting we have a clerk of council that reads the entire ordinance word for word. And some of those ordinances can be very, very lengthy. This would only require reading the title. We would publish the entire ordinance online so they could be looked at by the public before the meeting. Issue 4, this is probably the most controversial for me. Never thought too much about it. But issue 4 is a requirement for the city manager to live in the city. The Supreme Court ruled that residency requirements are illegal, so all we're doing there is cleaning up. You don't know how many people came up to me and said, "Why do you want to move out of town?" Well, I don't. It's just cleaning up the ordinance. Issue 5 is just language in the annual budget. Right now it says the city manager will prepare it. In all reality, the finance director and the city manager prepares that budget. Issue 6, just changing the title of the city solicitor to law director. Issue 7 is just when we prepare the budget. Right now we do it in January, but the charter says that we have to do it by May 15th. So again, we're just cleaning up what we actually do. And issue 8, the last one, is the same thing as issue 4. The finance director currently is required to live in the city. So this would just allow what the Supreme Court has ruled on the residency. That's all I have. Thank you.
I grew up in Holmes County, just south of Wayne County. Graduated from West Holmes High School, and I continued my education by going to Ohio State University, where I got my degree in business management. During the time that I was earning my degree, I was working for Siemens Corporation. I've worked for Siemens Corporation for 45 years, and soon to retire. And I have worked in 3 states with them, Florida, Tennessee, and here in Ohio. And got a lot of knowledge, got a lot of experience working with a lot of people. Trained a lot of people. Trained a lot of young people to continue on and advise them to go on and continue their education as well. Well, there was my concern for jumping in and and running for county commissioner was that I found out one day while I was attending a East Union Township meeting that our communication system in the county did not work well, that we had dead spots in the county. What does that mean? That means that emergency response people, your law enforcement, could not call or receive calls from the Justice Center in some areas. That concerned me. I'm not young anymore. I might need some assistance. At 18, I was fearless, all right? And so I said, well, you know, this disturbs me because I might need somebody to help me at some point in time. So at that point in time, I said, we need to move on. We need to make a decision on the MARC system and improve our communication system so that not only is it protection for the local residents, but your first responders, it is safety for them. It is also safety for your law enforcement as well as they respond to any type of situation. We all know that we have some situations going on around the county in the past year. Over in Strasburg, we had an elderly couple that was kidnapped and murdered. West Salem area, we had an older lady where a gentleman came up to borrow some gas. She didn't have any gas, and somebody, or this individual, because she didn't have gas, stabbed this lady. We have the opiate situation here where heroin addiction is just going rampant. I just attended a safety council meeting yesterday where Captain Hunter made a presentation. These are all reasons why we need to improve on our communication system. It's to benefit the whole county. I'm very proud to live in this county. I think Wayne County can do a lot more to be at the top of the level in the state. Thank you.
Inviting me to speak today. In the County Commissioner's Handbook, it says that after it details all of our duties, it says perhaps the most important attribute of a county commissioner is the ability to listen, lead, and compromise and develop a consensus on priority issues to improve the county. Those are things that I consider to be my most important attributes. The ability to lead, listen, and compromise. Since being appointed commissioner in July, I've formed many relationships with elected officials and constituents across the county. I believe that having these relationships in place is very important in going forward and making critical decisions. There are a couple of things that I would like to address today. Basically the same things that Rodney just addressed, but they are important to our county. As county commissioners, we have been working very diligently to take care of the communication problem in Wayne County. We have a new tower that is going to be delivered October 31st in the Marshallville area and be erected, and that will hopefully take care of the dead spots that we have here, mostly in Rittman, Doylestown, and the northeastern quadrant. So that is being done there. And we are refurbishing a tower in New Pittsburgh that will take care of those issues in that area. We've worked to obtain grants so that all fire departments in Wayne County received MARCS radios. Now, they didn't receive enough, and we are still working to obtain more grants for the fire and EMS departments. The opiate epidemic impacts our county in several ways, but the most important, most critical is the way it affects our children. We have an increased number of children in custody. Placement and ongoing services are needed. These children have behavioral issues in school. They need ongoing treatment, and that is ongoing dollars. The reunification process of these children with their families takes longer because of the reoccurrence of this epidemic and the addiction. Oh my goodness. Generally agreed that we can't treat ourselves out of this, our way out of this problem. And I currently serve on the opiate task force in Wayne County and was recently informed of a program started by Governor Kasich called Start Talking. It's a drug prevention initiative which works with, provides tools for parents and teachers alike to get the word out and to get that conversation started. I'm committed to working together with county agencies and educators to do what we can to get a handle on this situation and to better educate our young people on the dangers of drugs. The bottom line is that Wayne County continues to be a great place to live, work, and raise a family, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. As I've had the privilege to travel around Wayne County, visiting agriculture and manufacturing businesses, I continue to be amazed at what we have here in Wayne County, and so proud of what we accomplished because we all work together. Nothing that is done here in Wayne County is done by one entity alone, but by all of us working together to make Wayne County a better place to live and work. I will continue to do what I can to see that Wayne County remains a strong, viable, and vibrant county that seeks to attract new businesses and jobs, but most of all, I will dedicate myself to working for the people of Wayne County as we move forward. Thank you.
The way he set up this meeting as a convening of Civic Day, I think this is a positive attribute. It's been an opportunity that I've enjoyed participating in several times over the years here, and I'm pleased that the students have been added in recent years. I think that's a major improvement. You know, people have been asking me for months in my network of friends and acquaintances, so Ron, your term limited at the end of 2016, what are you going to do next? And my answer always was, well, every job assignment I've had, it's been an unexpected surprise, and I haven't had that yet, so I'm not sure what will be next for me until we got the surprise that we didn't want in July when Commissioner Jim Carmichael died. And it was at that point, very quickly, that the consensus developed, hey, I need to do this, I want to do this, and I'm looking forward to the possibility of serving the county in this way. So that brought me into gear for what I'm aspiring to do next year and beyond for the county in that regard. You know, I've developed experience over the years. For example, recent budgets at the state level, I was asked to lead the 31-member House Finance Committee in putting the budget together, which is really not something any one person does. It's a group project. And the opportunity to work at that is an example of some of the things I've had a chance to do, which I hope will bring value to the county should I be chosen to serve in that role in this election cycle. But the county commissioners actually have multiple roles, often which are not well known. For example, that budget making responsibility is one of the major duties. It's a legislative duty of the county commissioners. But beyond that, they have a range of services, everything from the airport to emergency services to the wastewater treatment that report directly to the commissioners. That's a management function. And beyond that, there are many partners, elected county officials, who the commissioners work in concert with to deliver services to our county. So that's just a little bit about that assignment and that responsibility. What are the challenges? There's a range of those. We only have a couple minutes, but I will say workforce is a growing and emerging, stronger and stronger every year challenge for our county. It's a great opportunity as well. We have a great county, but we also have many of our citizens who have not yet achieved the level of living which usually requires a good paying job to live self-sufficiently and not be dependent on government services or just not living as effectively as they could. Opiates have been mentioned. This is a surface issue that's very much in people's minds. There are things much deeper in that are driving, I think, that problem, and it is a major concern. I've had the opportunity to serve, or not serve, but to be present in the 3 last meetings of the Opiate Task Force here in Rittman, and I'm pleased that you have that focus. There's a county focus as well. There's a lot more that could be said about that, but the commissioners are not in a position to simply pass a resolution and fix that, but we can convene and help and work as a catalyst with the many others that are already focused on this in an effort to try to do what we can to strengthen, frankly, our family structures and our community structures, which is where this problem falls from. And it's a challenge, but it's one that we should roll up our sleeves and continue to work together on, and I look forward to that possibility. Thank you very much.
As long as you got somebody to blame it on, that's all that matters. So this is all your fault, Kevin. And Kevin and I go way back. Matter of fact, I was county commissioner between 1989 and 92. Well, a lot of good things took place back then. Actually, we petitioned Judge Bailey to create the Park District. We actually were instrumental in creating the Wayne Development Council, which is now called the Wayne Economic Development Council. I just was reminded the other day at a commissioners meeting that in 1990 we started our self-employed health insurance. Well, that falls between 1989 and 92. So if you look back between 1989 and 92, there are a lot of good things that happened. And actually, it might just be dumb luck, but even though the Park District was created and we petitioned Judge Lehman to do it, I kind of went back to the real world for a while and finally got appointed to the Park District. And within the time that I was on the Park District Board before I resigned to run for office again, we had raised over $400,000, and they just had the dedication for the Casey's Trail, for the Romick Pavilion, and it's fantastic. If you haven't been out there yet, go out. It's out by the county home. And so I hope to promote more quality of life stuff, and which obviously promotes, you know, better living, and it's a better place to live, work, and play. But on the other hand, too, I don't know if you ever heard of that NIMBY syndrome, not in my backyard. Well, in political life, there's called not in my term of office. And so one thing that took place during my term of office, that means I've used up 2 minutes. Good, I got 3 minutes. Two. But anyway, we were presented the challenge of whether or not to raise the sales tax. Now that was back in '92. We held some meetings, passed it by resolution. It can either be put on the ballot or passed by resolution. And well, we implemented the 1/4% sales tax back 23 years ago. It had been 20 years prior to that any increase in the sales tax. So the county gets 3/4 of a penny. Matter of fact, the state has raised the sales tax 3/4 of a penny since we raised it 23 years ago. Now, I got to be the bad guy because I didn't get to even spend any of it because it was the last year of office. So, but if you notice, from 1992, my last year, when right after the sales tax, started being collected, the additional sales tax started being collected, the budget went crazy. You know, they built the big fancy courthouse that you're still spending on, I think, $600,000 a year. So I think they got another 4 or 5 years. I was against the big fancy courthouse, and you guys want to talk to me a little bit about that later, I'd be glad to. But that's one of the issues now of how do we address the budget deficit. And there again, even back when I was county commissioner before, we had a jail overcrowding problem. I was against the building of a new jail. We started talking about implementing the non-lockdown, non-secure type facilities. And Lee's getting ready. So talk to me later. If nothing else, I feel that there ought to be a balance on the Board of Commissioners. We'll at least have one one-legged person on the board, right?
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Chief, for inviting me. I'm going to split my time into 3 pieces. 1 minute about my background, 1 minute about why I'm running, and 2 minutes about what I propose to try and accomplish during the first term. So I'm a businessman. I've never run for public office before. My family's from the Akron area. My grandfather was a vice president at Goodyear for his entire life, basically. I grew up in military bases. My father was in the Army, and I went to the University of Pennsylvania. I've traveled the world. I've worked, I've actually built projects in every continent except Antarctica, which I'm still trying to do. Locally, I've built 4 companies in Wayne County. The most successful one, actually, most people don't know about, is Cyber Corporation, founded here in 2004, sold in 2007. It's now a division of Lockheed Martin. More popularly known as ABS Materials. We make reactive glass materials that clean up toxic waste down in Worcester. We bought the old Bell & Howell factory, cleaned it up, and that's sort of what I'm known for locally. Why am I running? I've been in probably 100 meetings with elected officials and several hundred more with their staffs. Most of those meetings were serving on commissions. I've served on multiple presidential commissions in DC, as well as commissions locally and at the state level. And I got very tired of the number of times I would hear, A, I'm not a scientist, B, I don't really understand the technology issues you're referring to, or C, it's not politically feasible for us to get behind these things. So it bothered me for years, and my wife gave me the book of letters written between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson after they both served as president. If you don't know, they wrote most of the early documents. They both served as president. They ran against each other and hated each other for 12 years. They didn't speak for 6 years. Then they exchanged 300 letters in which they apologized to each other. And their biggest complaint was the fact that the two-party system was destroying the country. So half their letters are about it. And they both praised Washington, who had created this thing called the Oath of Cincinnatus, asking people who had quality in their community to stand up and run for office and set aside party and run on your credentials. So I said to my wife, is that still possible? And she said no, and so that's why I'm running. When you're married, you'll understand. What would I like to do? So there's a lot more detail on the website, but I'll bullet point it. I've had the pleasure to speak to 1,400 people to get enough signatures to be on the ballot. One of the challenges of being an independent is that. And since then, I've actually knocked over 5,000 doors personally and had more than 2,000 conversations. Education funding and the way it's tested, in my opinion, is a consistent concern. And I would like to see a moratorium on testing for counties that wish to participate in a test. I have side-by-side demonstrations of places where this has been done in the past. And the one thing they have found out over and over again, when two side-by-side counties or two side-by-side prefectures, one eliminates testing, the other doesn't, returns the resources to the actual teaching process, they find out 5 years later, guess what? The kids that had no testing test better than the kids that were tested. So when you actually test the tests, they fail. So I would like to demonstrate that. The two other major things that I'd like to sponsor, and fascinatingly, I put that up on my website months ago. I've now had 7 other people either serving as representatives who expect to be reelected incumbents, or 2 people who are non-incumbents or hopeful say that if that moves forward, they'll co-sponsor it with me. So clearly there's a lot of people that agree with that one. The other big thing is what I call SBIR match funding. You build a future by investing in education, durable infrastructure, and technology. If you look at any society and why it's moved forward, those are the 3 things they invest in. If you win an SBIR, extremely competitive, federal process, only 1 in 10 company does, the state should just hand you a parallel check. And if you want an example of how that works, it's called Google. They won a $100,000 grant from the DoD. California said, here's another $100,000, hire the business people. Sergey Brin built the company to start with that fund. Thank you. Talk to you later.
I'd like to thank the Rittman Rotary, for this opportunity to be here today. I think this is a great opportunity to come and speak to you about the future and the things that are going on. Also, I want to say once again, in my 12 years I've been able to do this at least 3 times, maybe 4 times. I really appreciate the mashed potatoes. Great, it's always great food. The mashed potatoes are some of the best in Wayne County that I've ever seen. So, has anybody ever heard radio personality John Tesh? Anybody ever? I have to admit that every once in a while, when I'm scanning the radio, I'll sit there and listen to some of his Intelligence for Life. But anyhow, he talked about a forensics report that came out here recently, and it basically said that about nearly half of those who had put in a resume are lying on that resume. I think that's pretty interesting because most of you look at resumes. Most of you have hired folks who've been a part of that process. So what do you have to do when you're looking at a resume? You have to check references, okay? That's one of the most important things you can do. Now, I will have to make a confession, okay, just to begin with. My confession is that I've been a county commissioner for 12 years, and some people believe that's a career politician length of time. So let me tell you something. Over those 12 years, I've built a few references that I'd like to talk about here, especially that are meaningful right here for Rittman. I've had the great opportunity of working with some of the folks who have represented you and represented you dogmatically, especially through the Ohio Public Works Program. And that is your Mayor, Bill Robertson, and City Manager Larry Boggs. Aggressively over these past 12 years, they've represented you and brought back $1.4 million in order to invest in your infrastructure. Projects such as the Liberty Street water line and the West Sunset Drive resurfacing. I've been happy to be a part of that and to work with them in doing those projects here in this town. Another references that I'd like to talk about as we go forward. is I'm really proud to be endorsed by organizations like the National Rifle Association, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the Ohio Right to Life, and the Ohio Society of Certified Public Accountants. I'm happy to be endorsed by the National Federation of Independent Businesses and the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. I appreciate those references. I think they matter for the future. Bottom line, if you're talking about what will you do, what do you want to do, I'd like to continue the path that Ron Olmsted has taken the state in making it more efficient. I'd like to try to streamline regulations and so businesses can focus on products and they can focus on employees. I'd like to roll back mandates in local governments and our school boards, which I believe would end up saving a massive amount of tax dollars, putting those tax dollars where they need to go and making sure that Ohio is economically competitive in the nation and grows in competitiveness. Finally, you'll know that you'll see many resumes this election season. But remember what John Tesh said. If you like a resume, you better check the references before you hire. So check my references. I'd love to have your vote this election season.
16th Congressional District. I was born in Akron, Ohio, raised in Summit County, went to Hudson High, went to Akron, the University of Akron. I see we have a lot of young kids here today from the high school. I worked at a few high schools. Normandy was the last high school I worked at in Parma, before that Valley Forge. I was a basketball coach for over 30 years. Baseball commissioner for the Cleveland Diocese, ran the largest basketball site in the diocese. But what led me here today was Bernie Sanders. I ended up being that person that ended up being the person who ran the Bernie Sanders movement, both in Cuyahoga County, Northeast Ohio, and also the state of Ohio. We did an excellent job with that, bringing a lot of people, young people especially, into the political mix. I never thought I'd be running for any office. It wasn't on my bucket list. 15, 16 months ago, my daughter told us she was pregnant. And I went, whoa, another grandchild. Ended up being triplets. So I really have other things to do other than running for office. But I'm running for office because we need to have change in Congress. We've had a Congress really for the last 6 years that hasn't done anything. They've been obstructionist. That's a word that you got to learn. And we can't allow this to happen. We talk about the drug problem we have in this county. And one of the main things that we could do to help this is to create jobs, good paying jobs. When people feel despair, they're in despair, and they just don't know where they're going to go in their life, and they say, oh my God, there's only jobs down at McDonald's or over at Walmart. We need to look at an infrastructure bill. An infrastructure bill will create a lot of jobs. We'll need to put a tax on gas for this. But this is the way we create good paying jobs. Good paying jobs will bring back the middle class, which we've lost. Over 50% of America are the working poor. And then though a lot of people who've retired, they're poor now also. They were not prepared for retirement, and Social Security is just not taking care of them. The other thing we need to look at is voting. Right now, 20 to 25% of America decides the direction we go. Only a little over half are registered voters. And of that, we're lucky to get 50% of them to vote. I think every person who, as soon as they turn 18, should be automatically registered to vote. And I think that we should all vote by mail. I want that paper ballot. I want to make sure that if we have to go back and check an election, we can without the machines. I've been married for 38 years now to the same woman. And it's one of the toughest things you do in life, and also raising your children. And now that the grandchildren are here, you have to think about their future. It's not about us in this room right now. It's about these guys over here, these high school students. It's also about our grandchildren. We have to give them a better tomorrow. The only way we're going to give them a better tomorrow is with jobs and getting the middle class back. I have 30 seconds. I'd like to have the students talk to me if you want. I want everybody here to ask me questions after we're done here. Thank you very much for having me. That's who I am. Not a whole lot there. I've never really run for office, and I don't plan on doing it if I don't win again. If I don't win, I'm not doing this again. This is one of the toughest damn things I've ever had to do. We have 6 counties and 770,000 people that we're going to represent. So it is the toughest thing you do. Every elected official, everybody that's running for office here, it's tough. It's a tough job. It's tough getting elected.